What would be a successful season for Aston Villa in the 24 to 25 season? We've got 4 games left in the league, at most 6 in all competitions, and I'm just kind of looking at it and seeing the big question I want to pose in this video is would an FA Cup and missing out on top 5 Champions League be considered a successful season? And basically, if that's what you would take, trophy, silverware, over a spot in the Champions League. So let's take a look at the individual competitions. The Carabao Cup was objectively not great. We beat Wickham away very easily. A lot of the young guys in the second team got their debuts, and what a wonderful thing to play in a win, get their debuts for the club. It's very cute. But then, losing to Crystal Palace at home was, I think, at the time the correct move because, that was still early in the season. We were still pushing in the Champions League, still very early on in the Premier League season. We didn't know what the heck that part of the season could have been. But now looking back in late April, I would say seventh place. Well, the Champions League, let me start with the Champions League, a competition that's over for us. Getting quarterfinals, I think at the beginning of the season, any Villa fan, any football fan would have said, hey, Villa getting to the quarterfinals, you probably count that as a win. And I do. And, we fought until the last minute. There's been enough said about the matchup about PSG and what could have been about getting to a semifinal. I'm not going to go in on that. I am just looking at a big picture. Before the season started, you would class that as a success, and getting the top 8, that is really what cements the fact that it was a success for me. The fact that we went in there, we got the job done to get top 8, saved us having to play 2 games against, I don't even know who finished Leverkusen. I forget who they played in the knockouts, but whoever they played, or was Leverkusen top 8? I forget. But either way, saving us 2 games when at that time we did not have the same squad depth we have now. We didn't have Asensio. We didn't have Rashford. We hadn't brought in Disasi, and that's when we were really having a center back crisis. But yeah, all that to say, Champions League, I consider that a success. I'm grading these kind of pass fail. Um, Champions League was a pass. Carabao Cup, I'm going to give us a fail, but there are conditions to it. Like, I think it would have been extremely difficult for us to compete on 4 fronts. I think we would have seen no success anywhere. Then moving on to the competition where at most there's 2 more games, the FA Cup. We have to get to the final. If we don't get to the final, I don't think that I'll be able to consider this a pass because we're playing Palace. Yes, I know our record against Palace has not been good. The last 3 games, 4-1 at Selhurst Park, 2-all at Villa Park, and that game flattered us. That scoreline completely flattered us. We got extremely lucky to even get a draw. And then last season, the last game of the season at Selhurst Park, 5-0, which I always want people to remember that, like, we were exhausted. We had already qualified for the Champions League. We weren't trying to win the game. It didn't matter. We had Champions League locked up. And literally, Emery's son was on the bench. That game did not matter. But what does matter is we do not play well against Palace. Now, granted, 2 of those games were at Selhurst Park, where we, in recent history, just don't have the best record there. But it's at Wembley, neutral ground. Villa are objectively a bigger club, bigger fan base than Crystal Palace. I think Wembley's going to be rocking. I think that now that we have this squad depth kind of integrated and, we've kind of learned more about how Asensio and Rashford specifically fit into that system. Also, Daniel Mallon, who scored in 3 games in a row. I'm not sure that he starts, but that squad depth, if it goes to extra time especially, Palace don't have that squad depth to keep up with taking potentially Watkins or Rashford or Mullen off the bench. We must win that game by any means necessary. Now, in the other matchup, if City get through and we fail to beat them in the final, I can live with that. I won't be happy because I hate City, but I can live with that because they are this unstoppable winning machine. This is the only trophy they can still win. Now, I would like to see us win it because, you know, forget City. Like, they've won enough. Let them have a trophyless season. They should. But long story short, if we get to the final of the FA Cup and, we lose to like a De Bruyne wonder goal or a Kovacic wonder goal, anyone with a wonder goal, similar to how City won the Champions League, they won on a Rodri wonder goal. And that was with Man City at the peak of their powers. So if we can go in and, give them all they got, but just not get over the line, I can live with that. Now, we're talking about now that we've talked about the FA Cup, let's move on to the league. We are currently 7th and I believe 2 points off of 5th, which is a Champions League spot. Currently, Chelsea and Forest are above us. Forest won on Monday. We lost on Tuesday, so that doesn't help. I know that there's been a lot of talk about, Forest are going to drop out. Forest are going to drop out. And yeah, their form's fallen away a little bit. They got the win against Dr. Tottenham, but their lack of squad depth. And granted, let me put this out there. I think the Forest project is interesting as hell. When I made my Premier League predictions in August, I believe, I said I had Forest getting relegated because, well, look at what I had to work with. They damn near got relegated the 2 seasons before that. But I did say that they have a lot of young talent that they just can't seem to get to work. Well, egg on my face, they get it to work this season. So the problem is we've left it so late to catch Forest and for Forest to drop away. They just have to hold on for 4 games. They could probably just troll their way to 5th at this point. They're currently 3rd. And then I know Chelsea. Chelsea they started off strong, but they've been wildly inconsistent and outright poor recently. They got the win in stoppage time against Fulham. That, as a Villa fan, was very disappointing because obviously we would have, from our win on Sunday, I forget. I don't know what day it is. Time is a social construct. We would have gained 2 points, but now we didn't, and then we lost 3 points to Man City and a point to everyone. I think Chelsea's run-in I saw was pretty easy. I know not easy. No, they have the hard one. And they've been dropping like a stone. They were arguably in a title race until about Christmas, and then they've just fallen away. So I am just hopeful that the pressure will get to them, and these inexperienced players who, once they experience a setback, they have a hard time turning it around. I can just only hope that Liverpool aren't on the beach. Newcastle will not be on the beach. Their Champions League campaign is far from locked up. So, and the beautiful thing is, if they drop points, Villa, now that we've played City, we play Fulham, Bournemouth, Man United, and I forget who our 4th opponent is, and that's really poor of me. I should have looked it up. Is not the hardest schedule. Now, granted, it's not the easiest. No game in the Premier League is easy. But if we can get our business done and win out those 4 games, I think we get top 5. I do. Now, that could be ignorant. This could come back and bite me in the ass because who knows? Chelsea could turn it around and turn it on. Forest could go undefeated as well. And then, if that happens, just kind of got to shrug your shoulders, tip your hat to the other team, shake their hand, and say, well played. Well played. The only thing I don't like about if we finish 7th and don't win the FA Cup is then we're in the Europa Conference League, and that makes it extremely difficult to recruit. And should probably go into Now, this begs the question, if we don't get, it's if I were offered the choice of you are guaranteed top five, Champions League, or the FA Cup, which does bring the Europa Conference, no, the Europa League, which one do you take? Do you take Champions League and money, or do you take silverware? And that to me is essentially a question of, are you be thinking with your head or with your heart? Because we got 83 million euros in prize money from the Champions League. That is unspeakably huge for a club like Aston Villa, who are trying to bring their project into disrupting that top six, breaking up that traditional top six. And we need money to do it. And Champions League, we got to the quarterfinals and made that much money. That is so many transfers. That is so much in wages. That is so much by means of recruitment. Rashford is apparently looking at only Champions League clubs. And granted, I don't know. I'm not entirely convinced that he's going to stay. I think he might be just using us as a stepping stone. But hey, if he gets goals and assists, which he has in an Aston Villa shirt, before moving on, maybe helps us win a trophy or get back in the Champions League, that is perfectly fine. That's exactly what he was brought in to do. But there's something undeniable about silverware. Aston Villa are a huge club. We founded the Football League. Without William McGregor, there would have been a Football League. But the fact that we did it is huge and a big point of pride for Villa and what makes us part of what makes us a big club. The only thing is, you know what else makes a big club? Silverware. We haven't won silverware in almost 30 years. So, I am thinking about this with like a weapon to my head, and I think I take Champions League, which is so wild to me because when I was listening to Claret and Blue debating back and forth about like a trophy, we've been talking about that now for 2 seasons because we've had two legitimate chances at a trophy, and I'm speaking past tense, like we've already not won the FA Cup, but because it is very possible that we could still get both, but just the amount of money to keep pushing that project forward, keep recruiting, keep uh, building on what we've done, getting further and further along. Eventually, trophies and silverware will come in the form of maybe we could win the Carabao Cup next season. That isn't as many games. We would probably, if we continue to recruit and develop as we are, we could give it a pretty good shot next season. But for now, just with how we want to build, what we've done in the Champions League, and now that I've had a taste of it, I kind of want it, which is wild because literally 2 weeks ago, I was like, FA Cup, FA Cup, FA Cup. But I think we need the Champions League. We are a Champions League club, top flight European competition club. That is what we need. And the run-in is going to be very interesting. Just as a football fan, I am looking forward to watching it, and I hope I see my team in the top five.